Hello everybody, my name is Arush Shangari, and in this video I'll be covering my top 5 programming projects. 4 out of my 5 programming projects are Python projects. And the main objective or purpose of this video is to show that the basic things we covered in part 1 and 2, like print statements, variables, operators, and a bit of if conditional statements, does play a big role in the more complex programs. And in fact, in a weather app, I use several if conditions. So these basic things do play a big role in the more complex programs. And another reason why I made this video is to show that there's so much into Python. There's so many modules. There's so much things you can do with Python, and it's like really hard to know everything in Python. There's just so much into it. So let's get started. So here's one of my best projects. It's COVID-19 data, and this is purely in Python, just one file. So basically, it just shows COVID-19 data, and it shows daily cases, and it also shows like how many days it has been since there were 100 cases. It shows that's about 850 days. And so I also imported a lot of modules here. So I imported 3 modules. So pandas is used to handle the data. Matplotlib, pyplot, and this is data visualization. So these 2 modules was used to like graph the data. So then here is, I give most of the credit for this program to the CSV, because the CSV is where I collected all the data through github.com. That's where I got like the cases per day, like July 18th, this many cases, and then all of that like specific each day. So then I got it from here, and that CSV keeps updating. So then here, lines 14 to 17 is where I use pandas to read the CSV and organize it by country, and then find the sum. So for each day, find the sum of all the days. So as of July 18, 2022, there's been 89,677,127 cases in the United States. And that's just the total. That's why there's some. There are many things into pandas itself. You can just add all of the numbers by just one function. And then I created a function make plot by each country. So after it found the country, or then it will just collect. It will still collect the data from that country, and then after that, it will express that data or show that data in a graph. So then here it's just updating like each day, like until what day it's gonna show. So until the current one, the newest version, the most updated version will show. And then here's just an error handling thing where if there's like no data, not enough data. But I don't think that's likely, because a lot of countries have had several COVID cases in the past. There has been at least a few waves. Like in the United States, there were one really big wave, but there were like 2 minor waves over here. And so then after that, here it's just showing like the labels from X and Y axis and organizing the boxes and how it looks like. So it's just showing the X and Y and like giving the points 0, 100, 300, 400, and then it keeps doing that. Like see these labels everywhere, and then here's just make plot country, which is a variable defined before. It's a function defined, and then it's just calling that function, and then it's gonna show the plot. So then these 2 variables also play a key role. That's just the country name. It's in the user. It's not in the user input. It's just in the input itself. and minimum cases is just showing like how many days since 100 cases. That is in the CSV itself. So an example could be like it could be any country. If you choose like Greece and run it, and then this will be the output. So as you see, there was a really big wave, 40,000 cases in one day over here, and then it's just gotten down just recently. And then it's been 850 days since 100 cases. Oh, yeah. So then there were only 3,843,142 cases as of 18 July 2022. And that's because there's less population in Greece. So that could be a really high number. And then another country, could do any country in the CSV. There's several countries there, like India, for example. And India had two big waves until it just settled down. So then they have 43,783,062 total cases as of 18 July 2022. And yeah, so that's how this program works. And here's the next one. This is the only one that is JavaScript. So this one is another version of Flappy Bird. So I just collected all the images online, like bird.png. That was the first step. Background, found that online. Because Flappy Bird used to be one of the most popular games, and then it got removed from Play Store. And then, yeah, so I just wanted to create a replica of it. So, alright. So here's the output. Let me load that. So this is the output. So yeah. So it's basically Flappy Bird. So as you see, I died, and I got a score of 1. So it just keeps on going until you die, and then it just keeps going. I'll play it one more time, and yeah. So that's a score of 0. So that's just a game I created. So basically, how it works is there are multiple JS files. There's sketch.js, bird.js, and pipe.js. These p5.js is just used for like the sound and all that. So sketch.js is just combining like the images and everything and putting all those mini puzzle pieces together. So all these mini files is put together with the sketch.js. So this is important. First, we can talk about bird.js and pipe.js. Here, the objective of this is just to make the bird like jump. If you press space, it'll jump. And basically, here's just the statistics of the current version, like this state. And here is just the how it looks like, the appearance, and then this here is just the velocity. So velocity is just the speed of it, and if it goes up, then it will affect the speed. And then here it's just updating like the position. So wherever the position is, it just depends on it. And this is basically controlled by the user. This is the bird.js is controlled by the user, depending if you space or not. So every time we put space, it's gonna go up by 25, and if this dot velocity is equal to this dot lift, then this dot up equals 2. That's just how you flap. So if it flaps, then that's just the functionality or the process behind flapping. And then here, the pipe.js is actually a bit different. Here is not controlled by the user. This is just randomly, the position of the pipe is randomly chosen. So class is basically just showing that the class is used to make objects. So here's just the constructor function. Here's just creating the object of how to create the object. similar to bird.js. And then here's how the appearance looks like. I also use this in bird.js. So that's the appearance of it. I don't want to dive too deep into it since there are a total of 5. And then off screen, and then okay, so this one is also important. If it hits the bird, then it's gonna show that game will the game will stop. So then here's just the if condition. These two are a lot of if conditions. If you notice, there are a lot of if conditions. And in if conditions, I just showed a sneak peek. There's also you also use return a lot in functions and if conditions. And then basically all this update function is just updating like the x value, because in Flappy Bird all that matters is like the x value, how much progress you made. And then if it hits the bird, then the game will stop, and then the game will just come to an end. However, there's still a few things I can improve in this. I could have made a restart button. And in sketch.js is just combining all the images here. So function preload, and then here's just the objects. So let pipes equals none, because it's null. Null means 0. Like the pipes aren't there yet as of once you start. And then playing is equal to false. The game state is not playing. The game state start. And then here are just the different images that is going to build the game. Here's just the canvas of the game. So basically, like where the bird's located, the size of it, and the size of the text, like what it ends. And here's just the canvas and how big the frame is. And so basically, if it ends, then I'll create a new bird. New bird is just duplicating another bird. So there's not just one. When you refresh or play again, there'll be another bird. And then here's just where it's located in the canvas. And then there's frame count and a bunch of other additional features to make it look better. Here's also the appearance. There's text like press space to jump. And then here's just the key press of key equals space, which is this, space, then it will flap the bird. So that's the sketch.js. This is combining the two very important JS files. And that's just the output. Play it one more time. Okay, so play it. And there. So I got a score of 1. Okay, the next project is the weather app. I used several if conditions here and a bunch of print statements. The only thing that I didn't include was the API address to openweathermap.org. Openweathermap.org is used as an API. It's commonly used for taking the data from it. It's similar to a CSV, except an API is just collecting data from from a certain link. I mean, you can use a CSV for a certain link, but it's gonna take requests from the satellite or something. So then I use import requests, and intro is basically print weather app. So that's just the intro, and I just called the function. So we're gonna learn about functions if I do another part, like part 3 or 4. Part 3 will most likely be loops, and part 4 will be functions. I'm not gonna guarantee I'll make those videos, but that's just so then functions is basically it's used to store a certain value. Instead of repeating it over and over again, you can just call it as many times as you want by just using a shortened version. Basically, functions and loops aren't necessary, but it's just easier to use. Like, let's say you want to create multiples of 5 until 200. Instead of just printing each one, that could work, but you will save a lot of time if you use a for loop or a while loop. So then another function is instructions, and then I'm just going to call that function. And then here's also another function. This repeats over and over again. So then it's going to take the API, city equals input city name, and then it's loading server. So what's my name? And then I'm your weather assistant. I'll help you find the weather today for your location. So I'm going to put Boston, and then it's going to load the forecast, 79 degrees, maximum temperature 82, and minimum temperature 75. So, and then the humidity is 70 degrees. So then, so wear light clothes, it's hot outside, and then there's a light wind. So that's just my advice. And then here from the API, I use the free version of the API, so I only got like 1 day forecast. I didn't get like everything, like 5 day forecast. So it could have been a bit better if I used the paid version, but I used the free version. And then, so then it's just gonna organize the API and take certain sections of it. So it's gonna print weather description, and then here it's getting the data for the weather, the temperature, max temperature, minimum temperature from that API. And then here it's just basically that was in Celsius. So then I had to do the calculation to get the Fahrenheit. And then here it's just printing the maximum temperature in Fahrenheit and then comma the variable. That's exactly what we used in part 1, where we combined print statements and variables. So like mine, in part 1, I am comma A years old. That's I am 13 years old. A was defined as 13. So in the description, make sure feel free to watch part 1 and part 2. And then here it's just showing the pressure and humidity, print pressure, humidity, wind, speed, all this data. And then here's a lot of if conditions, if and elif conditions. And we haven't covered elif conditions. It's just basically if you want to implement multiple conditions, you use elif. So basically, if condition, we covered these if conditions. You can use as many as you want. So if temperature Fahrenheit is greater than 64, then it says wear light clothes. It is hot outside. If it's greater than 44, between 44 and 64, it's going to be wear a thick shirt or sweater. And then if it's greater than 35, it is cold. I would recommend a jacket, and so on. And then here it's just showing if it's raining. If description is light rain, then get an umbrella no matter what the temperature is. And then same thing here, if the miles per hour, if it's between 41 and 69, there's a major gale, and be cautious when you're outside. And then there's a big storm and then hurricane. So there's just a bunch of if conditions, whether it's wind speed, if it is the conditions outside, or the temperature. So this is the one where it's like really close to the stuff we learned in part 1, like the print statements, parts 1 and 2, print statements. We also used operators, as you see here, if it's greater than equal to. We even used variables. Every single program we used variables. And then also we used if conditions a lot. And then here's just a tic-tac-toe game. This is a Tinker. So the next one, this is probably my best one of my best also. And in this program, it's just a tic-tac-toe game. And then basically I use Tinker. How I made it into an application is due to GUI. Tinker is basically GUI. GUI is basically an interface that is used to make like applications. And it's really good to use, GUI. And then here is GUI is actually a lot different. There's no like print statements and all that. It's a bit different. It's like a totally separate thing. So that here it's just basically, and then if I want, then it's basically just, so it's really hard to beat the computer. I've beaten the computer several times, but most of the time it was a tie. And multiplayer also works. Multiplayer was a lot easier because this one I could just use a location, just a certain location, whatever the user does. Just the single player game was really hard because then you have to use like a lot of functions to like define and like make the computer hard to beat. And then, so player one won the match. It was diagonal, and basically, so this is just the thinker database. I still use functions. These functions are like used for like the process behind how to play, and here's just the game board. Also, I use functions to like design it too. And then I use several functions here and there, a lot of functions for each thing. And functions are very useful in Python. That's probably the most used thing for like multiple programs. And this next one is also in GUI or in Tinker in OS or operating system. So this one is a password manager, like you see in a website. The only thing about this is that it won't like give you the option to forget password. So if you enter a username and sign up, let's say I want to put a username hello 1234, and then put password Python as the password. Then it'll tell you to sign up and then log in. So then my username was hello1234 and then Python. So then I'll say login successful, logged in. And then if I just change it a bit, like 78 this, then I'll say that's invalid login, and it'll just show the error. That's GUI itself, so it's gonna. This is an if-else statement. Basically, remember in part 2 at the end, I was giving a sneak peek to else statements. It's an alternative path. If this condition is returned false, then that's the alternative path. It's either it'll do these lines, or it's either gonna show error in these lines. And then you could delete user, and the process happens over and over again. But it's not an actual website, it's just like a login and sign up system, like the system that you can implement onto a website. And here I also used functions. I can't use print statements since it's GUI, and I use variables. Like you can also update variables. I forgot to mention that in part 1, that if you, let's say you want to print, so let's say a equals 5, and then if you want to say a equals or b equals a, that means 5 equals 5. So if you print b or a, it's still going to print 5. So you can just say that r equals this, and you can just update the variable. So once it's defined, you can still change it, and that's a very big thing in variables. And then I use global to save the variables, and there's just a bunch into Python. Other than like print statements and that, there's still a bunch of other stuff, but this is like the most used stuff on like, and it comes in handy in all these programs. So these are the 5 programs, and I have much more. Like here I used a like while loop and a bunch of ifs and elif statements. And you can use functions in the if condition. So I use several functions: display, menu, add item, view item, search item. Basically, while true is going to keep doing that until the user wants to exit the program. So until it's returned false. So it's going to keep iterating the thing it's going to do. It's going to keep iterating the action until that thing, a certain thing is returned false. So then add item if choice equals 1, and it's used as a function, and I define choice I define choice like right here, and that's at the beginning of the code. So sometimes, even if it's at the end of the code, it can still be used at the beginning. And then here's just an additional program. So here are my top 5. It's the password generator. I use Thinker and operating system. Here I used multiple things, random, Thinker, and all these tools. So to make the tic-tac-toe game. And then the weather app, I used requests, which is basically I used from the API. Here, reason I used requests was when over here, because of the API, I had to use requests. And here's the Flappy Bird game. This one involved a lot of objects, and it was just a really fun game to make. It combined a lot of images, objects, and yeah. And then here is COVID-19 data. This one is also a very big thing. This one is a CSV file that is converted into a data file, and then after that, CSV file is basically a data file, and then it's converted into a graph and all these additional statistics. So like this is data visualization, and yeah. So those are my top 5 projects: COVID-19, Flappy Bird, a weather app, tic-tac-toe game, and password generator. And out of these 5 projects, 4 of them are in Python. And this just shows how much you can do with Python. There's so much into Python. Python, even stuff I didn't know could be existed in Python. So for instance, I created a REPL that had YouTube in it, and all you have to do is import PyTube from YouTube, and you can see the amount of views, the likes, the duration of the video, and all the statistics of the video in Python. So it's just a user input without any GUI or any application. It's just say enter the link of the video, and then it gives you the option to download. And that code was only 7 lines of code. And some of these imports and modules basically can help a lot and do a lot of stuff. But just defining them, it can do a lot of stuff. Like this was only 46 lines of code, and that's all due to the CSV files. Just collect the data from the CSV and graphed it. So sometimes things can be easier than it looks when you use like modules and other things. And that's all for today. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in watching the Python tutorial parts 1 and 2, the link for both of them are in the description below. Have a nice day and see you in the next video. Thank you.